hazardous. She's only 17, made us curious. It was a carefree time. How about we jump back and rewind? We were living on Winger and a prayer, just garbage pail kids with mullets and big hair. Let's open up another pack. Gen X wants their future back. Break out the denim jackets and faded band patches. Share memories, Polaroid captured. It's the Gen X marks the spot podcast.
Hey there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast from the Wherever I May Roam studio. I'm your host, Joe Augustine. What an absolute scorcher of an episode we have today. Our friends, Helix, lead vocalist Brian Vollmer from up north in Canada is our guest. And if you grew up in the 80s, you should know who Helix is. Come on, man. You gotta know she's my heavy metal love. Yeah, that's the jam right there. That is one of the anthems that defined our generation. And if you did not grow up in that era, well, you are about to get schooled in some serious Canadian hard rock history. Helix has been around for over 4 decades. And this conversation I had with Brian and the latest release from Helix called Scrap Metal is everything I hoped it would be and more. Scrap Metal was just released on January 23rd, and the whole album is already rising up some of the charts that are out there, already in the top 100. And let me tell you, it absolutely rocks. Brian and I talked about all the makings of this album, and you're going to hear some of the incredible stories about how it came together. But what really got me excited was talking about their latest single, Stuck in the 80's. Damn, I wish I was stuck in the 80s with everything that's going on in this world. And when you hear how this new song came about, you're really going to understand why Helix has remained relevant for years upon years. And speaking of the 80s, we went deep into what life on the road was really like back then. I'm talking about tour buses, shows, the grind of North America, the ice cold chills of the upper neighbors to us in the north and grinding it out. All the wild stories that come with being in a rock band. So turn this up and never turn it down. Let's get ready for an incredible conversation with Brian Vollmer of Helix. He is one of rock's true road warriors. Brian is about to rock you right now. Here's my interview. So Brian, thank you so much for joining me today on the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I want to say congratulations to you on the release of your latest album, Scrap Metal.
Yeah, we broke the top 100 yesterday. We're pretty excited about that.
Nice.
If we can get up higher in the charts, perhaps we'll get some American dates. You know, we spent most of the 80s down playing the United States. We started off in 1983 when we got signed to Capitol EMI in, I believe, Columbus, Ohio, with Blackfoot and Molly Hatchet. And that tour fell apart, and then they put us on with Motorhead. And we started that tour in Hartford, Connecticut. And we worked our way west till we ended up in Minneapolis at the First Avenue Club owned by Prince. And then ICM, who was our booking agency at the time, they put us on with any act they could put us on with just to keep us down. Then we played with bands like Marshall Crenshaw and Greg Kinn, another heavy metal band. And finally, we made our way out to California. We did 3 days with Michael Bolton down through California, and then the next album we went down and played with Whitesnake right across the country. So,
well, that was when Michael Bolton was a little bit more rock, and you guys had Heavy Metal Love out, I would take it.
That's right. He was more like Bob Seger at that point of his career, and great guy. He was really sweet to us and treated us well. And I actually like Michael Bolton quite a bit. He's got a great voice. I hear he's not well right now. So if you're out there, Michael, get well soon, please.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but we spent most of the 80s down in the States. And because in Canada, really, when you play the major markets, you're done in 2 weeks. So we played the States. We went over to Europe. Our first tour in Europe was with Kiss. In fact, we were the first band to play with Kiss with their makeup off in Lisbon, Portugal in 1983. And then on that tour, we did 13 countries in 32 days. We were traveling in an English van. So once we got outside of England, you were driving on the wrong side of the road. And we were sleeping on top of the gear. We had all the gear in the back of this van and then a sheet of plywood. And we used to sleep in there like friggin' sardines. If that thing would have ever have rolled, we would all died.
Well, thankfully it didn't roll.
Thankfully, it didn't roll or rock.
Now, with the new album, Scrap Metal, you had mentioned previously that this album started out as an afterthought and then kind of morphed into this full-fledged album.
Well, first off, I'm always writing. I write with whoever, basically I can find it write with. I do a lot of writing with Sean Kelly, who plays guitar for Lee Aaron. And he's played for Nelly Furtado. He's played for Gilby Clarke, Glass Tiger. He's just an excellent guitar player. He can play any genre of music from classical is actually what he graduated from university is majoring in, I think. He had one of those New World Order albums with his classical guitar playing. But I do a lot of writing with Sean Kelly. I write with Gord Pryor and Steve George Kapopoulos. We wrote the Power of Rock and Roll album together. I also write with Tony Palashi, who was in my Vollmer band when we put out that with my first indie album. So I have all these songs that I save on my computer and in folders. And whenever I go to do an album, I go back and I see what songs I got and which ones match up with each other. In the case of Scrap Metal, I had the title in my head. I thought it was a great title. And I went back to some of the demos that we did back in the 80s. Now, back around the time we did Wild in the Streets and Back for Another Taste, we had a practice hall in Kitchener, Ontario on Brydup Street. And we used to go in there and we used to try to kick out a song a day. And we'd record, and we had a little 4-track Akai machine, I think. And we had all these demos, and some of them our managers just give us a thumbs down, and other ones made the Back for Another Taste and the Wild Streets album. But we had a lot left over, so we went back and we revisited those songs when we did the old school album around. I think that was around 2019 or 2018, and that album came out, and then COVID hit, and the world went nuts, and everybody had a hair on fire moment. And I didn't really put a lot of effort into pushing that album just because of all the craziness that was going on. And so when we went to do this album, we had these demos left over from the 80s. And I had written a song, a brand new song with Sean called Stuck in the 80s. And the idea behind the song lyrically was that the 80s were a very special decade. We had a lot of freedom back then. At least it felt to me like I had a lot of freedom that I don't have now. We had all that great music come out, and it had its own sound. So that's what that song's about. In fact, the lyrics in the song and the bridge go, "Take a ride in my time machine, back to when the music seemed so much better than it is today. I don't know what can I say. I'm stuck in the 80s." And so we had that song, which kind of summed up the disc. And then we went back and we started listening to some of the other demos that we hadn't finished off. And Sean said to me, he says, these songs really sound good. He said, you should finish them off. And I really respect Sean's opinion because he's such a great artist. And so we started working on them. And I brought Daryl in, my bass player in Helix, who knows the band very well. And Daryl produced the old school album. And I teamed him up with Aaron Murray. Now, Aaron Murray, he did a couple albums for us. Aaron is a protege of Danny Broadbeck, who now works at Fanshawe College in London. And Danny worked with Dolores O'Riordan before she died. And Danny was the protege of Jack Richardson, who produced the Guess Who, Bob Seger. I think he worked with Alice Cooper. So great lineage of producers. And so I took Aaron and Daryl, and they teamed up, and they started going out the songs and ripping them apart, and they helped to rearrange some of the songs. I went back in, and some of the lyrics and the verses weren't quite right, so I rewrote a lot of the lyrics. And Sean come in. Then I brought my band in to add to it, and just little by little it started going along. And I didn't really know what to expect, except that I just wanted to put out an album. And it started to get better and better. I'm like, this turned out pretty good. And for the B side of the CD, we went back to those albums: Half Alive, Old School, Half Alive B-sides, Old School. Those 3 albums. And I cherry picked the very best songs off those albums, especially Old School and B-sides. I took Jaws of the Tiger, Danger Zone, which we do live on stage, we have for a long time. And then Old School, coming back to Bigger Guns, and Tie Me Down, and Closer, that I wrote with a guy named Anthony Vandenberg up in Toronto. And that was the B-sides. And the album just came together. And, synchronicity, things happen for a reason. It was a very happy accident, let's say. And when we got to the end, we went, wow, this just turned out pretty damn good. And then I brought in Jay Panasico to do all the artwork. He's helped with a lot of the videos. Jay Panasico, once again, he's very adept at working on social media, but his father, Nick Panasico, was a famous promoter in his own right. He brought the Supremes to London, Ontario when he was 15 years old. Oh. He was friends with Freddie Mercury and Liberace and Ronnie Hawkins and just about everybody in the business, Kiss. In fact, Jay told me one time, he says, when they say I grew up with Kiss, they really are being truthful, because I have a picture of Kiss when I was a baby. They're holding me in swaddling clothes in this picture. And Kiss actually stayed at his dad's place when he was growing up. So it was just a wonderful combination of all these people coming together. And I know I sound like I'm very scattered in this, but it was kind of like that when we were putting it together. I didn't, it wasn't one straightforward, straight line to the finish. It just all started to come together from all different directions. And like I said, synchronicity, things happen for a reason. They happen when they're supposed to happen. I just get up every day and I get in front of my computer and I work at what I do. And one of the things I do is create music. And a lot of people my age have quit doing that. But that's the reason I got into the business. That really turns my crank, as they say, or floats my boat. And I love writing songs. And nothing gives me a bigger thrill. I got enough money. I could have retired years ago. I got a couple houses, and my wife and I live pretty comfortably. But I sat down a couple years ago and I went, if I retire, what would make me happy? Would it be traveling around the world? Well, I've kind of done that with the band. Would it be a brand new car? Well, yeah, not really. And there wasn't any toys I wanted to get that would make me happy. What really makes me happy is being on stage. We had 7 days with Nazareth in October, and we were playing casinos and small arenas across Canada, and I just had so much fun. And being with my guys, and the camaraderie and the fun times we have when we're together and laughing, and that's my favorite time of life. And then when I'm here, I have a social life with my wife. My wife Linda is just as rock and roll as I am. She came from the Hard Rock Cafe. She's an English girl, and she used to work down there. And she served everybody from Telly Savalas to Joan Rivers to Muhammad Ali. And, she used to have a flat just down from the BBC. And she rented out the one room to Neil Murray, who was the bass player for Whitesnake. So, David Coverdale be over at her place. And on the first Van Halen tour, they went over to her apartment. And that's where Van Halen party was at. Linda's apartment, later became mine and Linda's apartment. And so she had a real rock and roll background. When she worked for the Hard Rock did catering at the AIDS Festival at Wembley Stadium. She also did catering when the wall came down in East Berlin. She did the catering for Roger Waters because the Hard Rock was hired to do that. So I have a social life outside of the band with my wife, and I go do a little golfing down here with the guys that live in our gated community. Sometimes I go fishing with my buddy Cam Dick. Everybody loves a Dick, and so I have a pretty full life.
And you're 69 years old. Why stop
I'm
now?
70. Come on.
You're 70. I thought you were still 69.
Oh no, good year though.
Right? Summer 69.
Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking that, but anyway.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to keep it PG. You've had some appearances on the Trailer Park Boys.
Good friends of mine.
So the exposure on the Trailer Park Boys, did that kind of change your fan base?
The Trailer Park Boys kept us alive for many years just because they were so huge in Canada, and then they started to become big outside the country in the United States, over in England. But they had an episode called Closer to the Heart, where they had not Neil Peart, Alex Lifeson in the show, and they mentioned Helix and Bubbles, or Mike Smith is the main character. He was a big Rush fan, and Ricky was a big Helix fan, and that's what the dialogue went, how the dialogue went. And so I phoned up Mike Clattenburg, who was the director of the show, and I said, "Hey, Mike," I said, "if I pay to fly out there and pay for my own rooms, you don't have to pay a cent, can I come down and watch you film the show? Because I've never seen a TV show being filmed before." And he said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to have you out here." So I flew out there, and they sent a limousine to pick me up, and they took me down to the set, and they were doing an episode called "I Think You Pissed Your Pants, Mr. Leahy." And I remember I was sitting on a picnic table, and they gave me a script, and the three guys come over, and I was kind of in awe because by that time the show was just taking off like gangbusters, and they were just a bunch in awe meeting me because they were big fans, and we became instant friends. And we did a tour with them and a heavy rap group called Swollen Members out in Western Canada. We did like 10 dates out through Western Canada after that, and then I appeared in the movie Countdown to Liquor Day with Alex Lifeson, and so yeah, big connection. But just having that profile from being associated with the show kept us in the public eye. That's part of the trick of doing that. I always kind of model Helix after Ronnie Hawkins. In Canada, if you walk up to anybody in the street, you go, "Hey, do you know who Ronnie Hawkins is?" They'll go, "Yeah, I know Ronnie Hawkins." And I'll go, "Do you know any songs by Ronnie Hawkins?" They go, "No." Which leads me to believe Ronnie Hawkins was a master of promoting himself. So, to keep going so many years, right, and not really have any songs out. We, on the other hand, do have songs out, and we had a lot more hits than Ronnie Hawkins. And it kept us alive. And I just, but you got to work it. You got to work it all the time. You got to make sure that, you have that exposure, you got that visibility, and you just keep working at it. I don't know. And, I find when you do that, and you're always moving forward, that the powers that be will take care of you.
If you look back at so many 80s bands, and then you look at some of the 90s alternative bands, the 80s bands are still more relevant today in 2026 than a lot or a majority of the bands in the 90s.
80s bands, though, had much more of a connection with the street. And that was because of, I think, the bar scene. You used to go to a bar, especially in Canada. The bar in small towns, big cities, was kind of like the social hub where everybody went. And then you pulled into a place like, I don't know, Seaforth, Ontario, small town, right? Everybody come down, check out the band on a Monday night. And if they liked you, they'd slowly trickle in. So by Friday night, you'd have a full house. Nowadays, you don't have that bar scene. I think largely because there was much less entertainment back in the late 70s and the early 80s when we started. There was no cell phones. There was no, late night TV even. There was no computers. Basically, it was bowling, playing pool, or going to the bar. And in Canada, one of the things that really, should I say, made the bar scene explode at the time was the fact in Canada, all across the nation, they dropped the drinking age from 21 to 18. And it was a bonanza for bar owners. And I have a friend, Tom Wajkowski, that was around that time period. And he said, if you could play harmonica and tap your foot, you had a gig, because there was literally bars everywhere. And I'm writing a book right now called The Golden Age of the Canadian Bar Circuit. And when we started in Waterloo, Ontario, and we played locally in Southern Ontario. And then as rock grew in Canada and spread through the bars, and there was more bars running rock acts, they'd set us up to Northern Ontario, which was the birth of fire. And yeah, if you ever played Kapuskasing in the middle of winter, which is listed in the book of lists as the third coldest city in the world, you haven't lived. And we used to take our sleeping bags with us. It got so cold in our rooms. And people don't realize, but you'd pull into town, you go to your room, which would be cold, or you have the old rads, because they weren't really made to support rock bands and things like that. You get into your room, there'd be like a bed, a night table, a dresser, and maybe, if you were lucky, a bathroom. And that was it. There was no TV. You didn't even have a phone in your room. If you wanted to phone home, you had to go home, downstairs with like 2 pockets full of quarters to talk for 3 minutes to somebody back home. And it was tough. And a lot of people in the early days of Helix, they couldn't handle it. They ended up quitting. And we went through a succession of players until we had a solid lineup around the time we got signed in 1983. Once music started to change again around 1989, 1990, then we started to go through players again. Then Paul was killed in the car accident. Brett left the band, and it was tough going through grunge. And suddenly bars weren't running full weeks. They were running like, a night or 2 nights. We dropped from concert level, playing stadiums of 20,000 people, down into bars, which was tough too. I survived it all. But a lot of bands that have been around for a long period of time have gone through those tough periods. And it's the tough periods that really harden you and make you more durable and survivable. I always like to say there's an old German saying, a hammer shatters glass and forges steel. And that's what became of us. We just got battle hardened. And now I got a great lineup in the band. They're all pro players. Great voices. There's 4 lead vocalists out front. Practice the set. We play stuff exactly like it was recorded. Daryl's my music guy, my bass player and producer, and we call him the practice Nazi. And he makes sure everybody knows their parts, or else. And nobody complains. Everybody has a good time, and it can be any better. And that's why that's another reason I don't think I'm going to quit for a long time, because it is so much fun. I have got, it was pretty tough. You get a lineup and you got one guy, you got 4 guys going this way, you got 1 guy going that way. It's hell. And that's why I got rid of those people. Nothing against them or anything, but I just say, look, sorry, you shouldn't be here. You'll probably be happier somewhere else. And I'd have to let them go. And the first time I had to fire somebody, it was tough. My stomach did flip-flops, because I don't like confrontation. I don't like being mean to people. But after I fired the first guy, it got easier.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Now, you, along with a lot of other rockers, Sammy Hagar, Graham Bonnet, those that have been around a while, you guys are still out there making music, giving it your all for the fans. And I just want to say how appreciative I am for that, because, keeping memories alive, keeping the music alive, keeping rock alive, that's what you guys are doing.
That's nice to hear. Thank you. I love what I do. I have a balance in my life. I think that the balance, like I said, having a social life as well as the band life is very important. John Lennon said you have to either grow with music or music outgrows you. And from that aspect, we're always trying to keep on top of things and progress and learn what the newest thing is out there to keep us out there. But as far as the sound of the songs and everything else and songwriting and having good choruses and that, yes, we're very much stuck in the 80s. I worked in that song title there.
And I hate to bring this up, but with everything going on in the world today, I would love to be stuck in the 80s.
Yeah. A lot of times, Jim, you must feel this too. You're talking to somebody, you can kind of get a gist of which way they're going, right?
Right.
And if you're not going in that direction, you just avoid it.
Agreed. 100%.
I definitely don't get into politics. I'm actually a very political person, but I don't get into it on my Facebook site or my website. I keep it to myself, and between my friends, we talk politics. When I was going to school, I went to a Catholic school when I was young, a little country school. My teacher, Inez Haid, was very influential actually in my life. This is about grade 3. She said, we're going to start having a current events test every week. And I was a bit of a brown noser, so I started reading newspapers. And when I was on the road, like I said, there's no TV, no telephones. So I would read as much as 3 different newspapers a day. And I've stayed reading newspapers my whole life. I find the biggest reason there's so much chaos with people nowadays is they're so ill-informed. They get political viewpoints and knowledge from like 5 minutes of entertainment tonight or off of a TikTok or something like that. And there's so, I just, like I said, I keep my opinions to myself for the most part, and between me and my friends.
And that's smart. Is there anything that you'd want to let your fans know?
We have a couple festivals booked already for next summer. We're playing Rock the Harbor on August the 14th, I believe, in Halifax, Nova Scotia with Lee Aaron. We're also playing Mendoza, which is outside of Winnipeg, and that'll probably be with other recording acts we know. But, we're always looking for dates, and especially in the States, it's difficult because unless you get a bunch of dates, it's not like the work permit is so expensive to get. I'm hoping that this album, if it does well, someone will come to us and maybe bring us a tour, something like that. The biggest thing I want to tell fans is that, and you can get the CD through Perris Records, which is my friend Tom Mathers out of Houston, Texas. That's Perris Records. So go there if you want to buy the new Helix CD. If you're a longtime Helix fan, you're thinking of picking up the CD and you haven't yet, please do so, because the higher we get on that chart, the more people notice it in the industry, and that generates maybe a date or maybe a tour or something like that. So American fans, we want you.
Absolutely.
Also, get in touch with me on Facebook. Website's called Planet Helix. I answer all my fan mail, all the mail. We always get back to our fans. That's something we did right from the start. We used to handwrite people back, and you were talking about it was a different era. Well, back then we had that grassroots following through the bars and that close connection. So we had that close connection right across the country. So when we had maybe an album that didn't do as well as the one before it, we still had that following. We still had that support. But going through the bars back then were like playing the minors. If you were going to play in the majors in baseball, you go through the minors. Well, the bars were the minors for the bands back then, and that gave us that connection with the fans. They actually got to talk to us between sets and things like that. So that's gone.
I loved how you just had that analogy there. That was great.
But it's the truth. I've thought about it a lot, and I wish bands. I always thought that somebody should put together a circuit for young bands, where a series of clubs right across the country, and just start them on the East Coast and run them to the West Coast, and then have another band in the next night, and people come out and check them out.
Hey, there's something you can work on.
Geez, one other thing to do.
Right. All right, Brian. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us here on the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. I truly appreciate your time.
Great being here. Nice talking to you. And maybe we'll do it again somewhere down the road.
What an absolute blast that was. I gotta say, I'm a little jealous. I'm up here in PA where we got struck by about 10 to 15 inches of snow and we are below zero. And Brian is just chilling, relaxing, acting all cool down in Florida. But hey, I'm really not complaining. That was a great interview. And their latest album, Scrap Metal, is great rock that you gotta sink your teeth into. Because I know once you hear it, it's going to just warm you all up inside. And you know, I gotta say this about the name of the band, Helix. If you don't know what a helix is a 3-dimensional spiral that continuously moves upward and never stopping and always climbing. And you know, that's exactly what this band has done for over 40 years. They just keep going, keep evolving, and keep rocking harder than ever. And listen, make sure you grab their brand new album, Scrap Metal. It came out on January 23rd through Perris Records. And their latest single, Stuck in the 80's, is already making waves. And trust me, this whole record delivers. Check Helix out on the usual spots on social media, Facebook, Instagram, you know the routine. Or just search for Helix Band, show them some love. And remember, folks, turn it up and never turn it down. This is Joe Augustine from the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. Peace out. Props everyone for listening.
The Gen X marks